This is Tyrone with God Is and the inspiration of gospel music also on Rainier Avenue Radio App. We give out free food each and every Saturday from 11 to 2. And so we want you to come on out and support us. We love on your community. And we also have a fish fry once a month. We want to raise funds, put back into the community. And so come on, support us. We need your love. And also, if you want to be connected with us, go to Rainier Avenue Radio World, to the website, Facebook, Instagram, and God Is. And as God Is got a website, we need your help, community. So come on out and get your free food each and every Saturday it is. And so we asking for donation, whatever you feel to give from your heart to the mind. And as we doing it right here for you, go to our website and touch love and give back. And so come on by 810 23rd Avenue, Rainier Avenue Radio World, your community radio station and inspiration of all the things we do in your community.
Welcome to the Fitness Corner. I'm your host, Mark Bryant, and you're going to get a whole total body workout on my show, starting off with a warm-up, aerobics, strength training, cool down, and stretching every Friday from 11:30 to 12 right here on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Hi, it's your favorite Rainier Avenue radio host from the Clean Greens Living Live show. It's Queen Bree
and Robin T.
Our show is live every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with topics ranging from life on the farm, health and wellness, and race and social justice.
We feature guests each week with expertise in activism, entrepreneurship, healing, and food justice.
So come join your girls live every Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Clean Greens Living Live show. You can even call in and be a part of the show. See you then.
Women Empowerment Talk Radio, your roadmap to business success. Tune in every Sunday at 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio World, providing resources and sharing motivational experiences from the everyday entrepreneur. Tune in Women Empowerment Talk Radio every Sunday, 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Wala aman lo doho sunti maadang ka maleto mbadi dalo yer ka hatta hadi kisto yer o sunti maadang ka may kinshene winan dar iyo dip wal barashe hadi dal qabta ama urlet menin digint ol disi mar hore kun sakal bokol todobatan sidid o kulolo jituwink ama mel wirshatyal kiyalang o istaamaloy wal bilbil galabta leska faylahayaw ilokot daktar ka sadi kahallahay tang adigus ka di gusuntum adang kala kasabaru hadi wal zaid ugato rabta media sekincounty.gov/led.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Hello, you are tuned in to your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio. We will be getting started shortly with the coronavirus special edition. Today, we got a couple of special guests for you with some crucial information. We will lead off here shortly with the chair of the Public Health Committee of King County Medical Society and co-chair of the Arthritis Foundation, Dr. Amish Dave of Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. After we speak with him, you will find out what's going on with the Seward Park Market as they try to navigate the coronavirus pandemic, with an interview with Jack's Chicken owner Richard Chung at 1:30. And then at 2 p.m., we'll talk with Dr. Mark Del Beccaro, who provides oversight for public health Seattle King County, explaining what the science says to expect from COVID this fall and winter, and what you can expect on how the virus will either grow or dissipate. We'll find out what science has to say, and that's going to happen at 2 o'clock. You're tuned in to your coronavirus special edition, hosted by Tony B, and we'll be starting here momentarily. But tonight, you should definitely check out some high school football action going on at 5 p.m. with a clash of 4A's best and 3A's best. Well, number 2 and 4A, Lake Stevens, will be starting their season off the first game of the Memorial Classic this 5 o'clock today against number 1 and 3A, O'Day. And that'll be followed by Seattle Prep, who's number 6 and 3A, taking on Mount Baker, who is also, I think, a ranked team in 1A, and that goes down 7:45 scheduled. It'll be right after the O'Day and Lake Stevens game, and that'll be all broadcasted right here on Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station. 5 o'clock for the O'Day Lake Stevens, and 7:45, possibly 8 p.m. for the Mount Baker at Seattle Prep. And tomorrow you can check out Garfield playing against AC Davis, a Eastern Washington team. And that goes down at 2 p.m. right here on Saturday. So stay with us right here on your community radio station. We should be starting the coronavirus special edition in a matter of minutes. So stay tuned. Enjoy some sweet jazz, funk, instrumental. And you'll be here with your host, Tony B, only momentarily. But feel free to chill out and enjoy these tunes right here on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Impacts of the Coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. It's me, Tony B, and we have another very informative show for you this Friday. Joining me on the program, and again, everything is impacted by the coronavirus. It will be Dr. And I want to make sure that I'm saying the name correctly. And once he comes on, I will correct it if I'm saying it wrong. But I believe it's Dr. Amish Dave, who is a rheumatologist in Seattle and on Bainbridge Island, and with the Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. He's also the chair of the Public Health Committee of King County Medical Society and co-chair of the Arthritis Foundation Great West. Dave is on the executive board of the American College of Physicians, Washington chapter, board of Washington State Medical Society, and the board of the Coalition of State Rheumatology Organizations. That's a lot of titles. We're going to find out what all that means here in just a little bit. Then coming up at 1:30, we're going to find out how the Seward Park Market has survived during the coronavirus pandemic. Richard Chung will be here at 2:30. We're going to take a look at what the science says to expect from COVID during this fall and winter. Joining us will be Dr. Mark Dale Baccaro. The outlook for this winter is not looking great. There's talking about a possible recession. Of course, people are going to be moving back inside. And that itself for the coronavirus and the variants is going to be an issue. So we'll be talking to those folks. But right now, I'd like to welcome to the program Dr. Dave. How are you?
Hey, Tony. It's nice to be there. It's Amish Dave. It's a weird French spelling.
And I was going to say Dave, and I said, okay, well, I'll just go with the way it looks, and I took my chances, but I apologize, and thanks for correcting me. Well, thank you for being here. One of the things, environmental justice. Again, like everything else, this was exacerbated. And the holes in the system were magnified with the coronavirus. We are here today to talk about something that definitely is a health issue, impacts families, and particularly those who are in low-income and those who live in particular neighborhoods. And if I'm saying something that's not right, just correct me. I'm cool with that. Lead poisoning, toxic prevention. Wow. And we have so many things going on that you forget sometimes because certain things take precedent, that these things are happening. Let's start with this, Dr. Dave. I kind of gave a little bit of your background, and you hold a bunch of you are in the mix. I'll just put it that way. Why do you choose, and why have you chosen to make this particular issue of importance to you? Lead poisoning, toxic poisoning, environmental justice issues.
Yeah, well, Tony, thanks so much for bringing up this issue. So I think we can't talk about improving the lives of people and the health of individuals in Washington State and in King County, really nationally, unless we focus on issues that are affecting people from birth and from a very young age. And I feel like there's few things that get me more riled up and me more angry than when you see a young person whose nervous system, whose brain, whose ability to function and to think has really been affected through no fault of their own. And I think that issue, one of the biggest issues that we can do is focus more on thinking about our housing, how lead might affect it, and especially thinking about older housing. And unfortunately, for many, many years, a lot of doctors, a lot of public health individuals thought of Washington State as a really young state. And so compared to other states where I've lived, like Massachusetts and Illinois, that have been doing big public health campaigns to focus on parents and kids understanding what the dangers of lead was, we were really behind in Washington State. And what that means is we have become one of the states, one of the last states in the country when it comes to screening kids for exposure to lead poisoning. And that has a lot of consequences that have hurt people over a long period of time.
Just to make sure that everybody's on the same page here.
Yeah.
We're talking about lead poisoning.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So lead is in a lot of different things. And before 1978, lead was essentially in most paint. And so essentially most houses built before 1978 and most apartment complexes had lead paint that was throughout it. Lead is also obviously in gasoline and a lot of factories and a lot of other areas. And lead is one of those environmental exposures that very easily enters into the body with touch, with taste, with smelling things and inhaling lead, essentially. And it's
I'm going to stop you right there for a second, because that's big.
Yeah.
Go back over what you
Yeah.
just said about the ways that this can infiltrate your system.
Yeah. So when we think about housing, there's a ton of old housing across Washington State and in King County. And people of color and people of lower socioeconomic status live in a lot of those housing. And there's lead throughout it. A lot of times, old lead paint just got painted over, but as it chips, it gets into the ground. Kids touch the older walls. People might be exposed to it via factories, and they might inhale it or touch it. And we know that this is happening to a lot of kids.
So you can inhale it, you can just touch it.
Yeah, most of it is actually through touching it, licking it. Kids especially, lick everything. They lick walls, they touch the walls, they put their fingers against their mouth, and in the dust particles, there's lead, and they're getting exposed to it.
Okay, I kind of interrupted you because I wanted to make sure that we got that essential messaging about how this could impact you. And so you were, and if you were done, I'll go on to the next question, but we were talking about lead poisoning, what it is. And I kind of interrupted you because that was...
Yeah, no, the basics are so important, Tony, and I apologize. I get so passionate about this topic that I missed that. But when we're talking about lead, it's not just in the paint, although that's one of the major sources of lead. We worry about whether there might be lead in drinking water, especially in buildings that have old pipes in them that aren't regularly inspected. And we also worry whether there's lead in certain toys, especially toys coming from countries overseas that still involve lead paint on them, as well as lead might be also found in various spices and foods that are being packaged overseas and being brought by family members. And so these are all potential sources of lead. And a great source for more information on where lead might be located is kingcounty.gov/lead, which talks about a lot of these sources.
Now, if we know these things about lead, there's no dumb question. Why would lead be being used overseas as a paint and then in food?
Yeah, so I want to bring up, lead is, so in food that's made in the United States, there's a lot of quality control issues there and good regulatory mechanisms to test the food to make sure that it's safe. But overseas, if people are buying something like a spice, like turmeric that might be bought in India and just bringing it over, especially families, you never know what's in it. You don't know whether the water was appropriately used to make the spices or used to make the foods, might be contaminated. So there's a lot of issues with families, especially immigrant families, picking things up overseas and bringing it over.
Now, false or is this a myth? I've heard lead poisoning in the water that we drink. Am I off on that, or tell me about that?
Yeah, so actually, it's oftentimes the pipes, if they were painted over, or what was used to make the pipes, if they have lead in the pipes, if it's seeping into the water. And so a lot of old buildings with old plumbing, if it's not regularly tested, you might be exposed to some lead in the water. And this is a major issue, especially for young kids, especially kids before the age of 3. And so it's kind of important, especially that if you're a family living in older housing built before 1978, and you have kids who are younger than 3, that you talk to your pediatrician and talk to your family medicine doctor, because you might want your kids tested for lead.
Okay, we started off hot, man, just getting right into this.
Yeah.
And so I want to let folks know who may be unaware. What are some signs, some warning signs, some things that you could notice about yourself, about your child, if you're unaware of whether this is something that's going on in your home?
Yeah, so I would say this, lead is one of those things that, that kids can be exposed to that might show up with some signs, but it might be totally silent for years. And what I mean by that is that some kids, especially if they get exposed to really high levels of leads, can certainly have developmental issues, be more irritable, get diagnosed with ADHD, and have problems at school with focusing, with thinking, with getting into arguments. But some kids, you might not see developmental changes until years later, and it might be just a lower IQ than other individuals, than other kids in the same grade. The key thing here is, and what we're trying to really say is, you want to catch kids early, and you want to find out whether there's lead and that they're being exposed to early. So it's really recommended that if your kids are on Apple Health, on a state Medicaid health program, they should definitely get tested at ages 12 months and 24 months, at 1 and 2 years of age, by their doctor. You really want to catch it early before they have changes to their brain, changes to their IQ that are difficult to fix later on.
My guest again is Dr. Amish Dave. We are talking about lead poisoning, toxic poisoning, essentially, again, what amounts to environmental justice issues, because this impacts certain communities and certain ethnicities. Dr. Dave, well, let me just start with this. I'm a big advocate for early education. And the fact that, brain development starts, 85% of the brain development is done by the time a child is 3 years old. So you're talking about the silent thing that can happen. Explain what it is that you're talking about in terms that lay people like me can understand about what's happening at this point that causes those issues that could be potentially a lifetime. Now, I mentioned that, again, what this isn't necessarily the conversation, but again, we know that 85% of the brain development is done by the time a child is 3 years old. That's why we try to incorporate some things into early education, really simple things that people can do to make sure that the synapses connect, things that happen like empathy. Let's talk about, explain to us, again, what you're talking about when you say early. We don't know what's happening, and it could affect a child for life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what we're talking about here is that lead is a very common component of a lot of different things, especially paints in the walls, and involved in a lot of coating of materials, including older furniture, including pipes. And the lead can seep into various things, including water or especially chipped paints on the walls. When kids at a really young age, especially before the age of 3, are exposed to this lead, either through touching wall or breathing it in if there's a lot of broken down paint in a house, or on the floor, if there's just a lot of dust with lead on it on the ground, it can really affect them. It affects their neurons, the way that synapses, which are those connections between the neurons, the nerves within the brain and our spinal cord, it affects how those connect with one another. And that can have lifelong consequences for people by reducing their IQ, by affecting the way that they think, by affecting behavior regulation and making people more irritable. And so there's more research that needs to be done, but it's estimated that the long-term consequences of kids getting exposed and really getting affected in their brain development early on, costs our society millions and millions of dollars. And unfortunately, the kids that are often exposed to a lot of this lead are often kids from families that are lower income, that might not know or that they need to be testing for this, talking to their doctor about this. And so we really want to spread that awareness today.
Tell us what this thing is called low blood lead testing rates. What does that mean in King County in Washington?
Yeah, so technically, well, not technically, it is law that all kids on Medicaid, including Apple Health, need to be tested for lead at 12 months and 24 months of age. Mm-hmm. And we're not doing that.
And that's law.
That's law.
Law.
Centers of Medicare and Medicaid, we should be doing that. And in other states like New York and Massachusetts, they're way better. They're at the top of the country in testing. In King County, we're doing a little bit better. In 2011, only 10% of our kids below the age of 3 were tested. We're up to 18% in 2018. but we're not doing a good enough job because about half of kids, about 50% of kids are on Apple Health in Washington State. We're only testing about 18% of kids. So we're below where we should be testing. In addition, there's kids who aren't on Apple Health who might live in older housing who might be affected by lead. And so we really want to get the conversation started. We really want parents, when they're talking to their pediatricians, their family medicine doctors, to ask, hey, should my kid be tested for lead? And if not, why not?
Did you say 10%?
In 2011, we're up to 18% in 2018, but still a lot lower than where we want to be.
You know, somebody should be ringing the fire alarm about this. Wow. Okay. Well, you were going to say something. I was going to ask you another question. Were you going to make a comment there?
Yeah, and I would say that, we are trying to overcome a lot of misperceptions, even in the medical world, where for years there were public health officials saying Washington State's a really young state. We don't really have old housing. We really shouldn't be worried about this issue of lead. And what we're coming back and telling people is actually we're missing a lot of cases of lead poisoning because of misthinking. And so King County Medical Society has been working with our public health officials in King County on putting together a medical education and nursing education program just this year on this topic. We're now trying to educate people and doctors, especially across the state, to really take this seriously too.
Well, you kind of got into this. But what are the barriers to testing for communities, and why do we continue to see such low rates of testing, even among priority populations like children on Medicare?
Yeah, so I would say a few things. One thing is, gosh, if you're a parent and you're taking your kid into the pediatrician's office, there's so much to talk about. You're worried about their kid's height, their weight, their diet, sleeping. You're worried about other vaccinations. There's a lot of concerns that parents have, and there's a lot of concerns that come up. And so it's easy to miss something like this if parents and doctors aren't aligned and they're not talking about it at the same time. So part of it is just awareness. Part of it is also, the families, there is a huge economic justice component here where a lot of parents just have a really hard time taking their kids into the doctor's visits because doctors' offices might not be open on weekdays. They might or are only open on weekdays. They might not be open on weeknights or weekends when parents have off and are able to come in. And so we really want, that to be an issue too, and for people to be thinking about this. And a lot of clinics don't know that testing for lead is really easy. There's now rapid lead testing machines where you don't have to do a whole blood draw from a child who's wiggling around and screaming at the doctor's office. Now it's a finger stick poke, and that's a lot easier for a lot of parents and a lot of kids to get tested. And so these are all issues that have come up.
I've been talking about environmental justice. You could say environmental racism. And let's just get to this. I said geographically, I said ethnically, racially. What communities, Dr. Dave, are most at risk for lead poisoning, and why?
Yeah, so data that we have really shows that especially African American and Latino populations are really affected in King County. We don't have good data from across the state, unfortunately, and we need to do a better job testing. Part of the issue also is that, from my understanding, at least as of a couple of years ago, King County was the only county in the state that was mandating that that landlords have to tell their leasees whether there's lead in the walls or lead in the stairwells or any place else in the building where kids might be, playing or around. Other counties don't do a good job on this. And so, these are some of the factors involved.
My guest again, Dr. Amish Dave. We are talking about lead poisoning, toxic poisoning, environmental justice, environmental racism. We've been having this conversation. It seems like the time has flown by. So I got to get to this now. What can folks do? How do they find out if this is in the walls, if this is in their house, if this is in their home, if it's in their water, if they want to get their child tested, if they want to get tested? If they're 5 or 6 year old and they want to, well, wait a minute, I want to know if this is something that impacted, at an earlier. Dr. Dave, what can folks do?
I think the first thing is talk with your kid's doctor and make sure that if you have a kid who's below the age of 2, ask to get tested for lead. If you know, especially if you're worried that you live in old housing. I think the other thing is, you know, make sure you're up to date when you look at your lease. I know when I've looked at my lease and different apartments that I've lived in, sometimes it seems like it's such a convoluted mess, but there should be something reporting whether lead is available. And I've actually lived in older buildings where lead is available or is there on the walls. And so ask your landlord whether there's lead, whether the building has been tested, so you know for your safety and your kids' safety as well. And then the other thing is get educated yourself. So again, go to kingcounty.gov/lead to learn more about where lead might be located in your community and your environment. And it's also good to just ask your school. Is there lead? Has the building been tested for lead? Have the pipes in the school been tested for lead? You know, as parents, it's important to just be aware about all the potential sources of exposure.
And I'm going to take this, what can folks do, a step further. Because, okay, you find this out, but you can't move. You know what I mean? Is there a way to get tested? Is it the pipes? Is it in the? How do I get rid of it? Okay, I found this out. Now, is there something in place for me to help me provide myself a better living situation, or am I just stuck here?
So there are resources available, and that's what people need to know. So that Public Health Seattle-King County, if there is lead exposure, they want to know about it. There are resources available to help you to repaint your house, to repaint your building. And those are ways to get rid of the lead exposure for the vast majority of people, especially if there are kids involved. We want to know about it. So that's another important reason to find out about it.
Dr. Dave, I really appreciate you being here and having this discussion with us. Again, somebody should be sounding the fire alarm about this. That's how I feel. And so that's what we're going to do today. I want to give you an opportunity for final words here before we go. Whatever you want to say, whatever you want to get out, whatever I failed to ask you that you think is important for our audience to hear right now.
I think that this is a huge issue. And I think that, you know, the biggest thing
I agree.
I think the biggest thing we can also do is talk with other parents, talk with the community, and educate people. That's what Public Health Seattle-King County and King County Medical Society has been doing. We've been organizing focus groups with Somali and Ethiopian refugee communities, Latino communities, South Asian communities. We really want people who might be most impacted and affected by this to know about it, because it's only through understanding how lead can affect your kids and people really advocating and talking to their politicians, talking to their community leaders, their school board members, that this is going to change. So this is a big process. We need more people involved.
Dr. Dave, thanks for joining us. We may have to get you back again and continue this conversation again to create awareness about this issue, and maybe even have to go back and find out, because if this is something that impacts, at an early age and you don't see the impact until later on, we just may have to do some review here. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tony.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio in our special impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. And we're bringing that information up because during this isolation, the focus was off of things, but this is just to bring it back to other things that are impacting and affecting our communities that have only been exacerbated by the coronavirus. Coming up next, if you live in South Seattle, you know about Jack's Chicken. We are going to be talking about what has become an iconic place in our South Seattle community, the Seward Park Market, and Mr. Richard Chung is going to be here, who's the owner and has a story himself. He's going to be a story about himself he can be able to share and also talk about his dad, Jack. We'll be back with Richard Chung and the Seward Park Market during the coronavirus right after this.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not meeting Mrs. Jones in that cafe for a chat and nothing else, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Atlantic Street Center has been serving the children, youth, and families of the Seattle-King County area since 1910. We partner with families and communities to raise healthy, successful children and youth through services including counseling, early learning, youth domestic violence, and education support for school-age children. Committed to serving the African American community, Atlantic Street Center provides services and support for all marginalized people. Learn more at AtlanticStreetCenter.org.
Yo, what's good? It's D-Money, and you should definitely check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Pacific, right on Rainier Avenue Radio.
With pint-sized Patron, P. Treasy the Don. Y'all be sure to clean your mirrors as we play brand new hip-hop and R&B from locals and worldwide.
Which ID yourself, aka Malcolm Flex. Make sure you check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday Pacific Standard Time from 9 to 11 p.m.
And to get those exclusive interviews that we be doing,
sipping a brand new fresh juice every single week.
Every Wednesday, 9 to 11, Rainier Avenue Radio. Yeah.
Philam Radio, servicing the Filipino and Filipino Americans all over the world. Philam Radio, streaming live in the internet every Tuesday from 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. Seattle, USA time. We are your host, Kuya Bert Kawili, Emma Heron, and
Manny Panganiban.
Philam Radio.
Friends of Waterfront Seattle presents Pier Sounds, an October concert series at Pier 62 on the downtown Seattle waterfront, featuring sensational regional bands and artists, including Tiffany Wilson on October 16th. These free, family-friendly concerts welcome everyone to come and enjoy live music and the sights and sounds of Seattle's waterfront. Pier 62 was home to one of the most iconic and popular music events in the city, Summer Nights on the Pier. Pier Sounds concert series forges this memory with new energy and music on a revitalized Pier 62 to reignite the sense of celebration and community in the place where it all began. Pier Sounds' new concert series at Pier 62.
Rainier Avenue Radio Digital Media Hub. Tune in at RainierAvenueRadio.world. Also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TuneIn apps.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. It's me, Tony B, and this is our special impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities show that we started on March 13th of 2020. And really at that time, we thought it would be maybe a couple months, if that, doing these shows. And then it got into summer, then it got into winter and things got worse. And it got into spring and things weren't getting any better. And then in July, some mandates were lifted and now they're back. And we are looking at a fall and winter that for the scientists and those who do the due diligence and research are saying that this could be pretty devastating. And in addition to that, we're possibly looking at a recession. So how do our small businesses do during these times? How did our small businesses do? Well, we know a lot of them did not make it. For a lot of communities, you have a place in your community that's, you can call it a mom and pop store, you can call it a convenience store, but it's just a place where you feel good going, like a, you know, if you remember that show, I'm kind of dating myself here, Cheers, where, you know, it's the community place. And when you go into Seward Park Market, you're always greeted with a smile. And if you're not familiar with Seward Park Market and you're driving down Rainier, when you get to Seward Park Avenue and the corner of Rainier, look over and go in there and get some of Jack's chicken. Okay, we're going to talk about other stuff too, but I'd like to bring on Mr. Richard Chung. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, Richard, this is different. Usually I'm seeing you and I'm on the other side of the counter and you're on the other side of the counter as I frequent your establishment quite a bit. Richard, well, let's start off with a little bit of background on yourself, Seward Park Market, Jack's Chicken, how this all got started, and your interest in providing this type of service that you provide for the community.
That is correct. It all started from my father. He started his business in Portland, Oregon, pretty much roughly in 19 I'd say 1989. He started his first business owning a community store in a dominantly Black neighborhood, Northeast Portland. And he served the community, and then customers would demand things, and one of those things was chicken. Everyone wanted chicken, and he started frying chicken. One of his employees helped him, and that's how he started frying chicken, and he built his reputation. And he opened another store, and then he built bars. He sort of built a large community in Northeast Portland where he got his reputation.
You know, we have open, honest, frank conversation on this show. If you don't know, now you know. So the question for my people and it is what it is. Wow, in a Black community, why would you start a business in a Black community?
That would be a question for my father, but I think that's something my father's always wanted to do, serve in a community and help a community. So he's always wanted to better communities, make like donations to youth groups, to baseball teams. And I think that's what my father likes doing, just being a part of a community and being loved. That's why he continues to do it.
And you know, we love ourselves.
Charisma. Yeah, and I think my father makes that a better place. And he's always welcoming, helping people who may be short a little bit here and there, but he doesn't mind helping out. So, and I got to be a part of that, which is great.
So you get here to Seattle, I take it, and you're in the Rainier Beach community, which is an incredibly diverse community. As I mentioned before, we love the diversity in our community. We have amazing people who do things every day, and what we try to do is highlight members of our community. Because a lot of times when you hear about South Seattle, all you hear about are the negative things, or crime or something like that. So for you, moving into South Seattle, again, to do this business, was that intentional? It sounds like it was. It sounds like that's the kind of neighborhood that y'all want to be in.
Well, the reason I came is for my family, for my father. But to be welcomed into a community was a bonus, or even greater, because working at Seward Park is great. We have great customers, a lot of regular customers we see every day, and we know what they want or need. And just to serve a community is like a pleasure and a blessing, of course.
One of the things. Go ahead, Jack.
My father has been doing stores his whole life, and one of my big dreams was to work with my father, regardless of what business he did. He's done real estate, he's done bars, he's done pretty much almost a lot of hotels, restaurants. So anything my father did, I was willing to tag along.
Again, you talk about community store, repeat customers. When the pandemic hit, Richard, tell me about what happened at that time. What you were thinking. You know, how were you going to survive? How long was this going to last? It had to change a lot of things for y'all.
Well, during the pandemic, a lot of the supply was becoming short. There's a lot of shortages happening. But one of the positive things was that we're an essential store, since we provide essential products that people need every day, which kept us alive. But not just selling products kept us alive. It was more of the community, the repeated customers, as you stated. They would always come to us for what they needed. They had other places to go. They could have went to Walmart. They could have went to Safeway. They could have gone to PCC. But we're very thankful that a lot of customers stuck or came to us and stayed with us, which kept us going. And, you know, they wanted more things, so we kept on bringing in more things. So that sort of kept us going, people requesting more and more. So we had to provide more.
And as we're moving forward, and you heard me mention, you know, that this is, at this point, Richard, this isn't going away. This is going to be here with us. And as we move into the fall and winter, how are you preparing for, again, what is going to be, according to the experts, according to the science, again, this new Delta variant? How are you going to prepare for this? You talked about supply chains breaking down and things being unavailable. How are you looking at this, again, in terms of surviving and continuing to be there to serve your community?
We're just going to try our best. I mean, we go through a lot of distributors, and some of those distributors are not available anymore. So we look for other distributors, or we'll personally pick up those items. Like Safeway used to provide us with chicken. And now that chain has sort of broken down and we can't rely on that supply anymore. We sometimes go to Restaurant Depot or go to other places to pick up these products. So we just have to make more effort to find these supplies, if we can find them, and provide them to our customers. And then we also want to make sure that our store stays like COVID free. So we provide masks and any other kind of help, or sometimes we would provide some kind of sources that you can receive from other revenues to get help.
You know, and during this entire time, one of the things that I mentioned before is that when you go into Seward Park Market, you're going to be greeted with a smile. You're probably going to be greeted personally. It seems that everybody that comes in that store, and then at the same time, you're probably going to be greeted by your name. And during the pandemic, that is so comforting and so welcoming. Explain where that came from? And it seems like you guys.
I think like you stated it, what goes around sort of comes around. Like we're greeted, we're welcomed into a neighborhood where we're not from. We're originally from Portland, Oregon. But since our community was so welcoming to us, we could only give back the same and be like, we're just really grateful to have a community like that. So, I mean, there's no reason for us to not greet or be angry towards a community that's so grateful for having the store. I think a lot of our customers talk about how they needed the store for the longest time, and it finally came. So we're grateful that we could provide that.
It is an incredible resource for our community. Again, I'm talking to Richard. Richard, what's your role there? I know you said fry cook.
I fry chicken for a living, but I own the business. But it originally started based off my father's beginning. He started it. I was living in South Korea, and then my father stayed around in the States. And then he sold his businesses in Portland, Oregon. But my mother happened to be living in Seattle. So my mother and father sort of collaborated and decided to open another store together.
Is that Jack right there
we're looking at? The beginning happened.
Is that Jack we're looking at right there?
Yeah, that's my dad. That is my father. That was on, I believe, some sort of holiday. It was like Father's Day or something, and one of our customers gave that to my father, which is sort of really great because, people sort of look up to my father as their father or someone like in that kind of figure.
Richard, yeah. How long have y'all been there at this location?
This should be our 7th year. Seventh year from September of 2000. I believe my father opened on 2014 or 15.
Well, as Rainier Avenue Radio, you know what we do, how we get down. Our role is to talk about our community, highlight our community. And yes, there are times when we have to talk about some of the things in our community that aren't going so well. But we make sure and also talk about a lot of the things that are going incredibly well. You mentioned, or I mentioned before, the diversity in our community. What is it that you enjoy about the Rainier Beach community, about South Seattle?
Well, you already stated the diversity. The diversity is great. We get to see people from all over the place of different color. But it seems everyone who comes to our store is always welcoming and like happy to be at our store. So regardless of their color, race, or background, we're always welcomed and loved. So we can only do the same and return that back to the community. And when people ask for things or request for things that they might want on our shelves or in our store, we try to bring those products in for them and try to continue to serve just essential products that can help the community move on, or just drink water or get ramen, something to eat, keep the community in motion. And it feels like a lot of family members come to our store and meet people that haven't seen in a while. So it's like almost a place where people can connect and feel safe and welcome, of course.
You know, and I can.
We don't promote violence or like bad, negative activity in our store, and we try to keep it that way.
And I can attest to what you're saying. I remember there was an item in your store that I hadn't seen anywhere else, and I'm like, "Hey, how are you gonna get some more of that?" And bam, couple weeks later, there you were, stocked up.
You know, I mean, it might not be like something great or anything, but you know, even small things like a beverage or something, someone might request that other stores they used to go to do not provide. And with Cloverdale, our other neighborhood store on Rainier, with that shut down, there's more demand, so we try to keep up.
They're just there aren't a lot of places that you can go where you can say, "Hey, can you get some more of that for me? Just for me?"
Yeah.
And that concept of again a neighborhood grocery. Again, people might call them mom and pop shops, but that is a term that I use affectionately, where you feel welcome. So now here's the big thing. Okay, Jack's Chicken, because whenever I come in there, if I'm people will come in and they'll be like, "Okay, I'm waiting on the chicken," or they'll be there, and sometimes it'll be, "Oh, yeah, there it is, right there, Jack's Chicken." So. Is this a secret recipe? How did you come up with the recipe? It's always pretty consistent. Is this something that you can't share, or you'll be punished?
This is my father's recipe. That's why we call it Jack's Chicken, and that's been in my father's recipe. I wouldn't say it's been in the family. It's been my father's recipe for over 30 years. It's actually, he got a lot of help from his employees during his first start at Alberta Street Market in Northeast Portland. And he like he does at all his businesses, he would let people taste the chicken. And our base is salt, garlic, black pepper. But he would always ask customers, and they would always have input and be like, more garlic, more salt, too salty. And then he would just reduce those ingredients and try to match. And then once a customer would be like, "It's perfect," then he would be like, "That's the recipe." So it's been over like ages of perfection of like people's trials, failures. Because when my father reopened the store in Seattle, he forgot his recipe. He just knew the basics like garlic, black pepper, salt. But he had to build that again by asking customers and pretty much giving out free chicken to everyone and asking. And that's sort of how I came upon Jack's Chicken.
What a great story. So the community actually contributed.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, it started in the Portland community, another community, Northeast Portland. But his chicken is still loved in Portland, although he doesn't own the business anymore. And now we get to share that love in Seattle also.
My guest again is Mr. Richard Chung, who's the owner of the Seward Park Market and also the fry cook right now. Tell us, Richard, if you don't mind, a couple of things that you just enjoy that maybe have happened within the community at the store that you look back on fondly.
Well, being welcomed and being recognized by a community is also always a blessing. Like when people come into my store and they recognize me and they want to have a conversation or talk about their problems that they had that day, I'm more than welcome to share it, or them sharing their information with me. Like I might have a customer come in and say they had a bad day, and then we always try to promote and good health and like try to make them feel better. And if they're down, you know, we might offer them extra piece of chicken or a beverage or something on the side, or just conversation alone, like discussing their issues. And if I don't have too many customers, we could sit down and like talk for like a couple minutes here and there. And I think that helps the community. And like when other community members recognize other community members inside our store, that also builds our store and makes it stronger. We just keep we just want to continue the positive vibe. Like we don't want to bring any negative energy into our store. So even if I have a bad day, I try to stay positive throughout the whole day, because personal problems I try to keep at home. And then when I'm serving the community, I want to be a part of the community in a positive way.
This is the Seward Park Market. Maybe you haven't heard of it. If you're not from South Seattle, maybe you've driven by and said, "Oh, Seward Park Market, what is that?" This is the spirit I'm talking about of the Seward Park Market. This is the spirit of Rainier Avenue. This is the spirit of our community in Rainier Beach. And Rich, it's just been such a pleasure having you on and being able to share what you do and to share your iconic location and the service that you provide to our communities. Who would not want to have a Seward Park Market in their neighborhood? I mean, things are changing so quickly now, and you get a lot of national, but we appreciate what you do and the fact that you continue to do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about you. So you were a teacher in South Korea for what, 8 years? Richard, are you still there?
I'm getting cut off.
Oh,
sorry, Tony.
We're hearing you now.
Yeah, my network was sort of shorting. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I was mentioning just a little bit about yourself and your background, and that you were a teacher in South Korea for what, 8 years?
Yes, that is correct. My father, he's always been encouraging higher education. So I graduated from Lincoln High School, although I had some health issues when I was younger, and my father was also there for me during that. I had 2 brain surgeries, which sort of delayed my education. And then my father always encouraged education because he felt like he didn't have those kind of tools or proper tools or the education that we have now these days. So he's always been an advocate of me like being educated. And then after I graduated from college, my father pretty much gave me 2 choices: more school or a job. And I chose being a teacher in South Korea, since that's my motherland. And that was only something I planned to do for a year, but it ended up being like a career for quite a long time, for 8 years, because it was really great working with kids and teaching. And I ended up buying like a dog, a house, and then it sort of became my home.
My guest again is Richard Chung, owner and fry cook of the Seward Park Market on Seward Park Avenue and Rainier Avenue, right on the corner. Again, as you can see, has been there for our community during the pandemic. And again, when I say you walk in and you're warmly greeted, you see now from Richard the attitude that they have and the love that they have for community. Richard, I want to give you the opportunity for final words here. For anybody who's listening, that you just want to say anything you want, Richard, that you want to say to our community members, or that you want to share. Do you think?
All I want to say is I just want to thank the community, and we wouldn't be there without them. I mean, they built our store pretty much from ground up. I mean, we need the support to be there. And with the peaceful movements we've had in our store, that we don't have any violence. I mean, a lot of stores may have issues, but the fact that we didn't have to face those problems allowed us to continue and help become an essential and stay an essential for the community. And we can't be thankful enough for everyone who supports our business and comes to our store for their needs or just to even greet us. We're thankful for all of those things that we get provided from our customers, and then we can provide for them.
Okay.
That is my last thoughts.
So if you're not from South Seattle and you've never heard of Seward Park Market, go down there, check it out. You're going to get the same treatment that we get in our community when you walk in the door, and you'll probably drive miles just to come back because you're having a bad day, and you need to see that smile, and you need to talk to Richard, get some therapy from him.
Thank you so much, Tony. And we actually do get a lot of customers from outside of Seattle, thanks to our community, because our community is so strong. And they branch out. They have family in Tacoma, Kent, Federal Way. Mm-hmm. And they come because of our community members. Tell them to come visit us.
All right. What's the address? Before we go, I can say in Seward Park Market, and folks can look that up, but what's the address? I mentioned on the corner of Seward Park Avenue and Rainier, but what's the actual address?
Our address is 9436 Rainier Avenue South, Seattle, Washington. 98118.
All right. Richard, you'll be seeing me soon, and I'll be seeing you soon.
Yes, sir, Tony.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to stop by here on Rainier Avenue Radio and share your story. And again, Richard, it's great to have y'all in our community, and awesome to be able to share who you are with our listeners in South Seattle, South King County, and also those places that you were talking about, Kent, Tacoma. Probably got people watching and listening right now. Oh, that's the Seward Park Market. God. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. Have a great one.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. It's me, Tony B, sharing a story of something that in our community. Again, a lot of times you hear different things about what's going on in South Seattle, and in particular in the Rainier Beach area. And so we love to be able to share stories like this about members of our community. If you're just tuning in, you missed a show with Dr. Amish Dave. We were talking about lead poisoning, toxic poisoning, and essentially what it amounts to environmental racism. Definitely go back and check out this silent killer that affects youth, and you may not even see the devastation until years later, and there's not a lot you can do at that point because it's impacting and affecting the brain and the way synapses connect. Again, you just heard Richard Chung from Seward Park Market. Coming up, we're going to be talking with Dr. Mark Del Beccaro. A lot of things have been happening in regards to changes in the coronavirus. We're hearing about variants. These experts, scientists are saying fall, winter are not going to be good, and the 6-month outlook is looking bleak. And I'm not trying to be, negative, but we should be aware of what's going on and what we're facing, so that we can all make good decisions for ourselves. So Dr. Mark Del Beccaro will be with us, and we'll be back with Dr. Del Beccaro in a few.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not using my GPS to navigate the land of 1,000 dances, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Friends of Waterfront Seattle presents Pier Sounds, an October concert series at Pier 62 on the downtown Seattle waterfront, featuring sensational regional bands and artists, including the Black Tone on October 2nd. These free family-friendly concerts welcome everyone to come and enjoy live music and the sights and sounds of Seattle's waterfront. Pier 62 was home to one of the most iconic and popular music events in the city, Summer Nights on the Pier. Pier Sound's concert series forges this memory with new energy and music on a revitalized Pier 62 to reignite the sense of celebration and community in the place where it all began. Pier Sound's new concert series at Pier 62.
We got the feeling now. Yeah.
R&B, soul, funk, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We give you all that and more on Star Time. Join me, Paul Pearson, for a 2-hour trip through the history of R&B. A new episode every week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Come and get the feeling on Star Time on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Hi, I'm Mac McGregor, the host of the You Can Make a Difference show, which airs live every Friday at 12 noon PT time. On the You Can Make a Difference show, we shine a spotlight on people who are doing amazing things to make a positive difference in our communities and in our world. We talk about what inspired them to do the work and what inspires them to keep going, how they got their start, and how you can, if it inspires you, plug into their work. We can all do something that makes a difference. So tune in every Friday at noon to the You Can Make a Difference show with Mac McGregor.
High school football is back, but guess what? We need more referees. There's a constant need for qualified individuals to work our high school football game. Please consider becoming a football official. Go to pnfoa.com to sign up today. That's pnfoa.com to sign up today. This is a message brought to you by Rainier Avenue Radio App, your home for Metro High School football.
Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic.
I'll take coronavirus for 100.
Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell.
What is staying home and isolate?
Correct.
Coronavirus for 200.
Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double! Should I take the coronavirus vaccine?
Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health. Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the Cabinets, from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Lines.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone line. Tell her who we talking to.
Sage Prince and Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about gonna do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Night Beat with Nasty Ness Rodriguez.
It's the beat of the Fox. K-Fox Night Beat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're gonna listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba. The Underground Surround Sound Star Time with Paul Pearson.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson.
Sunday evening sound sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to midnight. Sunday evening, your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio. There is no secret why Downbeat Magazine calls this Seattle's most important annual jazz event. The 33rd annual Earshot Jazz Festival hits Seattle stages October with one-of-a-kind live jazz performances and video live streams all the way through November 7th. This year's Earshot Jazz Festival features established masters like Diane Reeves, Chuco Valdez, Dee Daniel, and red-hot young stars like Theo Croker, Emmanuel Wilkins, and Samara Joy, celebrating both Seattle's history and its future in the world of jazz. Earshot teams up with community partners like Langston, the Royal Room, and Rainier Avenue Radio to showcase Seattle's own resident artists. Tickets and more information are available online at earshot.com.
earshot.org. That's earshot.org. Once again, Seattle's most important annual jazz event, I believe. Earshot Jazz Festival, hitting stages early October all the way through November 7th. Call for more information.
You know you can't get enough of Rainier Avenue Radio. .world.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. Let me clear my throat. It's me, Tony B, and you're listening to the impacts of the coronavirus in South Seattle and surrounding communities. Again, started this on March 20th. If you're just tuning in, we were talking earlier with Dr. Dave, Dr. Amish Dave, about lead poisoning and the toxic poisoning, environmental racism, environmental justice, and again, exacerbated by the circumstances surrounding the pandemic. Go back and check that out. You really need to hear about that show. I'm ringing the fire alarm about lead poisoning and how that's impacting, in particular, Black communities and low-income communities where you may not even know it's taking place. And the devastation is happens at a young age, and then it's almost irreversible. So you really want to find out about that. Also, I spoke with Richard Chung, the owner and also the fry cook at Seward Park Market. And you got to hear about the wonderful work that they do in our community as an essential service. And again, you can go in there and you're always going to get a smile. Again, they call these places mom and pop places, but they're critical to our communities. And every community would want a Seward Park Market in their community. As I mentioned earlier, all of the researchers, scientists, are saying that the next 6 months are not going to be very pleasant. As a matter of fact, the Delta variant is out there and making things worse, that it is more contagious and more easily spread. And then we're going to move back indoors, and folks have become a little more lax, and then the political football about vaccines is again causing folks to fight, being vaccinated, being unvaccinated. And in the meantime, the coronavirus just does not care. It just keeps doing what it's doing. And now we may be facing a recession. So let's find out. Let's just kind of get an update. I'm happy to as I mentioned before, just talk about where we're at, what this may look like, what the science says to expect from COVID during this fall and winter. My guest is Dr. Mark Dale Baccaro, who provides oversight for both the testing and vaccine strategy team at Public Health Seattle King County. Started in June of 2020, volunteering to lead the local testing strategy for COVID-19, including to help implement 6 high-volume testing sites concentrated in South King County to serve those most impacted by COVID. Prior to this, he worked for over 30 years at Seattle Children's Hospital, serving in a number of leadership positions, including pediatrician in chief medical information officer, and his final role as a chief medical officer while maintaining a clinical role as pediatric emergency medicine provider. Oh, it's a lot of titles. Dr. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be back, and thanks for you constantly being a great source of information for the community.
How do you remember all those titles? What do you write them on your hand like a cheat sheet so you can?
Yeah, I had to put them on a piece of paper to know.
I'm gonna dive right into this because there's so much to talk about. So am I wrong when I say, am I just, Chicken Little with these warnings of doom impending when I talk about this is going to get worse over the next few months, 6 months? Am I wrong about that? I would like to be wrong about it, but that's what I keep hearing. Let's hear from you.
Sure.
And we'll kind of just generally why this is being said and why folks are anticipating this.
Sure. No, Tony, unfortunately, you're not really Chicken Little. You don't look like Chicken Little either, which is good. I would say that for the reasons that you already were really perceptively alluding to is, we've had the luxury of nicer summer weather, being outside, not being cooped in together. And as the weather turns like it's doing this weekend and we have more time indoors, the risk of spread is really through airborne. That's the most common spread mechanism. And when you're in a house and you have to close the windows, and after a few hours of everybody being in the same room, the air gets pretty saturated with whatever germs people have, including COVID. And COVID, as you said, is really good once it gets into your nose to reproduce itself and create an infection. Unfortunately, even though King County as a whole is one of the best counties in the country with vaccination, as a whole, we're well over 70% of people that are eligible are vaccinated. When you add in who isn't eligible yet, which are kids under 11, as well as the disparities in our communities of color, especially in South Seattle and South King County, there are still, unfortunately, well over 200,000 people who are not vaccinated in our county that can get COVID. And as you pointed out, the Delta surge is affecting primarily unvaccinated people. So when you take those folks and you bring them in, some of whom can't choose to be vaccinated if they're young, the risk of spread is pretty high. There are some pretty good predictive models coming from the University of Washington about that we could have several 100,000 more COVID infections over the next few months. And that's why it's really important to get the messages out that you're doing about getting vaccinated, masking, and doing other things to protect, especially those who are not able to protect themselves, like kids and some immune suppressed folks.
Again, this is Tony B. You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Our special impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding community show. My guest is Dr. Mark Del Bacaro. We're just talking about maybe when people are looking into their crystal ball to project what's going to happen. I think that, when this started, there was always a hopefulness that a couple months it'll be done. Oh, a couple more months it'll be done. Doctor, what is your prognosis for COVID-19? Is this part of our life? Is this part of our existence right now? Will there come a point? And I know you're not Nostradamus, but will there come a point in time where we can say, okay, we're through with this thing finally? Good gosh! And you may not have that answer, but I got to ask you because you're the guy who's here to talk about these things.
Yeah, no, and it's a great question, Tony. I think the reality is we want to get it to where it's no worse and maybe better than flu. We live with flu every year, and unfortunately it does get people sick, and unfortunately people die of flu, but not at the rate that people are dying of COVID right now. And I think one of the advantages that we have with flu is that there are vaccines all the way down to very young children who can get it. We're hoping that sometime in the time frame of October through December that the vaccine will get approved for younger ages. And that's going to be the next major turning point, really, because like I said, for folks that have families where kids are in the home or where they're visiting families with kids in the home and kids are now back in school kind of mixing with each other, they can't protect themselves from getting COVID and spreading it. In states that are not doing as well with the vaccine with us, children's hospitals are overwhelmed. Their ICUs are overwhelmed, just like adult hospitals are here in King County. And unfortunately, even in our county, Seattle Children's in the last few weeks had their first child die of COVID and have more kids with COVID in the ICU now than they did in the past. So I think, the things that will really turn this to where it becomes manageable and we'll have our somewhat normal life back again are really getting the bulk of the folks that are unable to be vaccinated right now, kids vaccinated, as well as working with communities where vaccination rates are still lagging behind. And most notably, in our communities of color that have different reasons and different hesitations about what their fears are about getting vaccine, as well as some other issues.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. You know how we get in. We have open, honest, frank conversation
Mm-hmm.
On this program. We know that there are, again, we're waiting for those under 12, to see if we have a safe vaccine. We know that some people have medical conditions that may not work with taking the vaccine. We also know that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. So I'm just going to ask you point blank, as there is
Sure.
now a clear push from our president as well to get vaccinated. Why should people get vaccinated?
It's one is the reason for, and then one is sort of the fear things that we need to talk about. So the reason for is that it is overwhelmingly the way to protect yourself and people around you, the people you care for. People who are not vaccinated are being hospitalized and dying at 40 times the rate of people who are vaccinated. So our ICUs and our emergency departments and our inpatient hospital beds are filled with people who are not vaccinated getting COVID, and unfortunately leading all the way to death. There is no way around that. That's the simple fact. What is also important to know is that's having a cascading effect, that now routine medical care for others who are not having a COVID infection is being highly impacted because there's no space in the inn. ERs are overflowing, ICUs are overflowing, routine care is being delayed, including, unfortunately, sometimes very serious illnesses where people come and there's just nowhere to go. So that's the one reason. The other is, as you said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Things like it's not safe for pregnant women. There have been a lot of data accumulated that show it is safe. And unfortunately, both here in King County and nationally, we are seeing a rise in deaths of pregnant women who have not chosen to get vaccinated because they were afraid. And there's other misinformation out there also. I guarantee you the hospitals and ERs are not full of people having side effects with COVID. They're full of people with COVID and people who are not vaccinated.
Okay. My understanding of this is that the longer this thing hangs around, the more mutations will happen. Explain to me what I'm thinking or I'm trying to say, and if that happens, what could potentially be the result of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we talked a little bit about this last time. Viruses replicate or grow at a very fast rate. So, humans, I have kids, but my kids have kids because I'm 65. But our generations are measured in like 20-year increments. Viruses are measured in hours and days. So they can keep reproducing themselves at a faster rate. And the more of them that are around, the more of them that could have minor changes, just like we have changes in how tall one of our siblings might be or their eye color or things like that. And if one of those natural mutations makes the virus a little less likely to get killed by our immune system, it will be the one that survives and keeps growing and spreading itself. So the more we can do to immunize enough of the population that these viruses have nowhere to go, the less chance that those mutations can take hold somewhere. And the Delta variant is a great example of it. Both in King County, there's a lot of unvaccinated folks, but when you look at the country as a whole and the world as a whole, there's unfortunately millions and millions of unvaccinated people So the virus doesn't care. Like you said, they don't care about countries or politics or anything. They'll find somebody that isn't vaccinated. They'll get in there, they'll create thousands of copies of themselves, and there'll be thousands of those viruses moving to the next person. And just by natural biologic processes, they will mutate, and the potential for one of those mutations being harder for your body to kill off rise.
What about the thought that if I get it, I build up antibodies and immunity that will protect me? Is that right? And to what extent is that right? And then the other thing is does that work with the variants as well? So maybe you had COVID, but one of the variants could be completely different. Is that? Let's explain that if that's the case.
It is partially correct. When you get any infection, your body will usually develop an immune response to it. The question is, how effective is it and how long does it last? And there's definite data that shows that even people who had COVID, their immunity goes away faster than somebody that got the vaccine. And so they will become at risk again. They're not necessarily at risk for the first 30 to 60 and maybe up to 90 days, but they are soon after that, whereas the vaccines last 6 to 12 months with very high immunity, depending upon what vaccine and your own body. So while it does give you some immunity, it's shorter lived, and it doesn't then protect you from getting it and spreading viruses later. There's been some studies in other states as well as some data from our state that show that the people most at risk are people who have not gotten the vaccine and not had the infection. But the next biggest risk group are people who didn't get the vaccine but had an infection in the past and their immunity is already gone. The most protected people overwhelmingly are people that are vaccinated.
Do we have it's been 18 months now since this first happened, and maybe 6-7 months since we've had a vaccine. Do we have enough information now about the efficacy of the vaccine? Just more information in general. When we were first given the vaccines out, it was studies were done, but do we have more information now that you can share with us since we're about 6 to 7 months into this vaccine?
Yeah, that's a great question. Even just locally, in King County, they've been given over 3 million doses of the vaccine. Nationally, there's hundreds of million doses, and worldwide, even more than that. So we're pretty sure about what the safety profile is. But then on the efficacy side, the data keeps coming in. There was another set of data released today that the FDA put out that showed that even at 6 months, where the efficacy was to keep people out of the hospital. And depending upon the vaccine, it was between 70 and 90 something percent efficacy to keep people out of the hospital 6 to 8 months after their vaccination. Today, actually, the FDA panels are reviewing the data and trying to decide who should get boosters and when they should get them. So there's going to be more information about that out today. It looks like in the first round, for sure, that people 65 and older who are more at risk for complications will be the first group to get approved for boosters. But, I expect that may change with time.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.World. It's me, Tony B. This is our special broadcast of the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. If you're just joining us for our conversation with Dr. Mark Del Caro, you missed a great conversation earlier with Dr. Amish Dave about lead poisoning and toxic poisoning and basically what amounts to in environmental racism. You really need to go back and check that show, especially if you have young children and your house is before 1978, because this thing impacts the brain and causes damage that you may not know right away, but will impact for the rest of the life. Also, Mr. Richard Chung was here from the Seward Park Market, our community essential service mom and pop store, talking about how they survived the pandemic, and again, just sharing with you why they're such a valuable asset in our South Seattle community. And it's always great to share those stories about South Seattle, because a lot of times you only hear negative about Seattle, but we have amazing people, amazing stories in South Seattle, and incredible things that people do every single day. Dr. Bakar, I want to give you the opportunity for final words here to our audience. Anything that you just want to share as we go into, again, the fall, and like it starts today, and the winter months, whatever you want to share.
Sure. And first of all, thank you, Tony. Like I said at the beginning, you're such a great voice for the community, and thanks for being at the press conference the other day too, and broadcasting that. You know, as you've said, we are headed into the fall. People are going to be indoors much more than they were in the summer, and the chance of spread just goes up because of the lack of air movement around us. So the absolute best way to protect yourself and to protect the ones you love, especially young people or people that have immune problems or are elders, is to get vaccinated. And if you're having questions about that, please seek out somebody that you trust in the healthcare field and talk to them about it, and let them help you negotiate some of the things that you're hearing to make it easier for you to feel comfortable getting vaccinated. There is the only way to protect yourself and your family and your friends is to get vaccinated. That's the best way. We still have to mask and do other things until we get this under control, but absolutely the best way to protect everybody is to get vaccinated.
Dr. Bakar, thank you again for joining me on the program. Appreciate you and everything that you do.
Appreciate you. Love anytime. Happy to join you on your show.
Coming up, I want to remind everybody that tonight we'll be broadcasting high school football. Yes, it's back. And they're trying to figure it out too and work with this, because we also know that mental health is important, and the ability to gather and be around friends is also critically important. So we're trying to work our way through this. Lake Stevens at 5 o'clock, number 2, 4A, taking on number 1, 3A, O'Day. These teams won't meet in any championship because of the fact that they're at different levels of division. But this game right here is going to be a headliner. Lake Stevens Vikings taking on the O'Day Fighting Irish, happens at 5 o'clock right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. You can watch on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, or you can listen in a number of different ways to tune in. You know what? Just get our app. Download the Rainier Avenue Radio app. Then you can listen, or you can watch and listen on both the Apple and Android, Google. You can find it, and it's absolutely free dollars. So that's one way to always be able to keep up with Rainier Avenue Radio. We'll be having Seattle Prep again tonight as well. We'll be playing, and that's Seattle Prep versus Mount Baker. Against Seattle Prep, great season last year and off to a great start this year. And then tomorrow it will be Garfield and AC Davis. AC Davis from Yakima. It's the Metro Memorial Classic that's taking place this weekend, and you can catch all the action right here on Rainier Avenue Radio .world. That's it. That's all the time that I have. That's going to do it for the kid. You can stay tuned on our audio channels and catch another coronavirus show. And then, of course, at 5 o'clock, football begins. So just remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you cannot, you are probably right. I'm out. Peace.